Despite the US and allies' continued ambitious efforts to bolster the Ukrainians, there are no signs of an endgame in the war. The Russia-Ukraine conflict seems destined to enter an even more complicated phase in the months ahead. Now, after tanks and long-range missiles, Zelensky is gunning for F-16 fighters, but there is no consensus among Western allies. For now, US has ruled out sending advanced fighter jets. As per Biden, the US military have deemed other support more crucial for the current stage than sending Ukraine F-16 fighters. In an exclusive interview with World News Tonight anchor David Muir, here's what the US president said.
Look, we're sending him what our seasoned military thinks he needs now. He needs tanks, he needs artillery, he needs air defense, including another HIMARS. There's things he needs now that we're sending him to put him in a position to be able to make gains this spring and this summer going into the fall.
You don't think he needs F-16s now?
No, he doesn't need F-16s now.
With depleted strength and dated aircraft, the Ukrainian Air Force is struggling. The Ukrainians fly Soviet-era jets like Sukhois and MiGs. The country's current fleet of warplanes is older than modern Ukraine itself. Now, the US has control over the F-16 jets re-export, and no nation will want to be out of step with Washington, given concerns about any possible Russian retaliation. Poland and Denmark are ready to help Kiev obtain F-16 fighters, but are expected to only act in concert with NATO allies. Now, the Ukrainian Air Force continues to see the F-16 fighters as the best option. Western fighters with standoff weapons would offer an improved capability to destroy fixed Russian targets near the front lines.
F-16s aren't just air-to-air systems to knock out other jets. F-16s are also air-to-ground systems, which means that they too would go after Soviet land formations, or rather Russian land formations.
But even analysts are divided on the issue. Many say the fighter aircraft won't be a magic wand in Ukraine. Even if Ukraine gets F-16 fighters, they would be at high risk from Russian air defenses. Pilots would have to fly very low near the front line, and something that would reduce the missile range and limit strike options. Now, for more on this, we are being joined live by Jamil Jaffer, who is the founder and executive director of National Security Institute. Thank you for being with us. No F-16s for Ukraine for now. What kind of impact will this have? And do you agree with US President Biden that other equipment such as tanks and missiles are more strategically important at this moment?
Well, you know, Alison, there's no doubt that the provision of the kind of weapon we've already been giving the Ukrainians, the 155 millimeter ammunition, the artillery weapons they need, the medium and longer range missiles, as well as these new supplies, these tanks that we're going to be putting in the fight, additional HIMARS batteries. Those are all critical to the fight and will help the Ukrainians be significantly more successful against the Russians. That being said, the Ukrainians say they need fighter jets. They've been asking for them for quite a while. I think it makes sense that if we have the capability to provide them, the U.S. and our Western allies, we should do so. And, you know, there's no doubt, though, that the president is right that the weapons that we are providing now, including in particular these tanks, are probably more important to the fight. But it doesn't mean that fighter jets would not be helpful.
Experts seem to be divided on this issue, with some saying that the fighter jets wouldn't be a magic wand in the war. What are your thoughts?
Alison, I think that's right. There's going to be no magic wand in this war. Fighter jets certainly would not be. You need the Ukrainian pilots to be trained up on them, be able to use them effectively. That's going to take some time in and of itself. Nevertheless, having fighter jets be able to push back both air-to-air against Russian forces, as well as your analyst earlier noted, to go air-to-ground against Russian forces will be valuable in the fight. But they're a longer-range plan, and the right thing to do is to start providing as much weaponry as fast as possible, and in particular these tanks and these artillery weapons and longer-range missiles. The Army Tactical Missile System is one system that could be very helpful to the Ukrainians that the U.S. or allies thus far have not provided. Those would be useful to get in the fight as well, in addition to these fighter jets down the road.
Now, Jamil, in your opinion, we are now in the second year of this war. Where does Ukraine stand, and is there any end in sight?
Well, one of the challenges that we're facing in this conflict is that because of the Ukrainians' own fighting prowess, their willingness to really take the fight to the Russians, they have been dramatically more successful than anybody expected. The supply of weapons by the Allies obviously have made that have been a critical part of that success. But what it really has been is the Ukrainians' will to fight and the Russians' failure to provide their own troops with adequate weaponry and capabilities, and the lack of morale amongst Russian forces. So there is an opportunity here for the Ukrainians really to take the advantage of this war, get beyond this frozen conflict, and actually potentially push towards a win, a victory, or at least a negotiated settlement that's much more positive. But that requires the United States and our allies to want the Ukrainians to win and to provide them with everything they need to win rapidly to speed up those supplies. That hasn't happened yet. Over the course of the last year, the U.S. has slowly, and our allies have slowly increased the amount of weaponry and slowly increased the speed. If we were to do more rapidly, that would allow the Ukrainians to really take the fight to the Russians.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your valued insights and analysis there.
Thanks, Alison.
We are now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.